Thank you everyone for having me along. Really excited to be here. So today we're going to be talking about how metadata makes your life better. Legitimately, it makes your life better and easier. Does that sound good? Who you want to have? Yeah. Who wants a better life? We're in a really vibrant place. Who wants a better life? I do. Metadata makes your life better. That's a really fun message. Well, it's not quite the same message we're going to take tomorrow, but I wanted to talk to you about how metadata actually is building value for us. Usually what I do is I check that this works, and it's not today. Is it plugged in? Yeah. Is it frozen? Oh, things are. Oh, there we go. It is working. Great. Usually I front load this with a couple of slides about what is metadata. Does anybody need an introduction to what metadata is? No. Great. All right. It's like a registry. It's like a place that you store things. It's different to the actual data. If you have it in a centralized location, you can find it. But what if the book is out of print? Oh, you can still see the record. So metadata is the record. Metadata is just like that. Even if you don't see the data, you can have access to the metadata. Great. Okay, fantastic. It's really good talking to data people because we all get it. We're all on the same page. So what is a metadata registry? We've covered. It's a record of the data we hold, but we take a slightly different view. We see a little bit further backwards. So whereas a lot of other products really love the data and hold the data and will tell you about vital statistics about the data itself, we take a different view and go not just the data definitions. We at Aristotle kind of take a view looking at performance frameworks, like why did we collect the data? Like, why did you go off and do it? What were you doing it for? Like, what's the governance of that? We look at business glossaries, and I think there's a lot of different tools out there that do business glossaries. We look at classifications and codes, which I think is a big differentiator for us. So there's a lot of really hard, deep classifications that are managed, especially across the Australian government sector. And then lastly, we look at questionnaires as well. So even before the data's come in the door, how are we defining it? What are we doing? What is the data? So great. All right, we all up to speed? Metadata, it's good. Fantastic. So I want to open today with 4 really simple statements that I think everybody at the Data Management Association of Australia can get behind. Data is, so thinking about your organization, data is our critical asset. Yeah? It's a critical asset for our organization. Metadata is how we understand this data now and tomorrow. So if I want to extract the most value out of my critical asset, metadata is how I will do that in the future. Data governance tells us how we're going to do this properly so that we have a continuous cycle of proper data management. And then lastly, we need to invest in data governance tools and processes so our staff are operating effectively. Does anybody disagree with anything I've put up there? No? All right. So does everybody agree that this is the message that we're taking back to our organizations today? Data is important. Yeah, come on, show of hands. Who says this? Great. Yes. Fantastic. Okay, I have one question for you then. Is it working? Is this message, I want you to send people to be better data managers, working for us? Okay, for people at home, there's a lot of shaking of heads, right? Like, we need to be doing better, right? And that's what I'm here to look at today. Because this is what we hear. Like, has anybody heard these at work before? I'm going to do a data governance project. So yeah, we're getting engagement.
I disagree with the previous slide. So
oh, really?
Yeah, the first one, the first sentence is wrong.
Data is our critical asset?
Metadata is necessary to understand even enough data. It's not necessary.
But we need to know what that data means. Like, if I don't understand, like, I can give you a lot of data today, but without the metadata, you won't even know what it means. I can give you a big old spreadsheet of stuff.
Well, referring back to your example with
Yeah.
Then recover metadata.
Okay, so the analogy in that case is the warehouse, the physical warehouse of books is our data. The index cards, classic old school metadata is like, that's how we find our books. It's like, it's on row 7, Dewey Decimal number 6. If I threw away all of our Dewey Decimal cards, good luck finding the book. So that's the idea, is like, we need information about our data to find and recover it, especially when it's held independently. So bear with me. Maybe I'm wrong.
You can always reverse engineer from given enough data.
I reckon there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people here who'd argue against that, but I'll have that conversation over a beer with you gladly. So if the majority of us think that this is how it's going, have we heard these things before? This is too expensive. I don't have the time. We've never done this before, so I don't want to. I'm not going to do this work now. Yeah? Like, yeah, we're still seeing noise. This is good. All right, I haven't fluffed this one yet. So if we've all heard these messages before, why is it happening? Like, we all get metadata is really good. Data is good. It's how we differentiate ourselves in our markets. It's how we talk to people and say, look, this is the information I hold, and this is why my organization is important. Well, the reason is this. So to give you a little background about me and why I'm giving this talk, is I used to be a data analyst. I actually worked under Simon, and I worked under Tanya, and I worked under Linton. It's convenient that you're all in a row. It's like Tetris. I was a software engineer before that, and I became a public servant, so I had a really good understanding of this side of the bridge metaphor. There was this whole world of data management that I really started to get into, and I started to see the value of it. I started to see, at a very intrinsic level, data management meant that I could understand this data and I could get value out of it, so that in a year's time, in 2 years' time, when people were reanalyzing this information, they were able to do so effectively. We knew where it was, we knew what it meant, we knew how we could interpret it correctly, we knew how we could link it. I got it. It was really great. I had some really good people to teach me, but it went really well. And then I had a brilliant idea of starting a company, which, as anybody can tell you, is a disastrously good way to never do what you're good at again. Thank you. Now I've learned a new skill set. I've been told I can't be so self-deprecating when I do these. So I learned a new skill set. I became a CEO of a software company here in Canberra, and I started selling these services across Canberra, and we're doing pretty good. We do quite effectively, and in the sponsor section, we'll talk about some of our success stories. And I realized there was a whole nother language. There was this language on the right where I started hearing again from our senior executives, our pen holders, the people who sign off on the checks. There was conversations that were happening around me that I didn't quite understand. So I went off to be an MBA. Has everybody heard that term? Like, everybody knows what an MBA is, right? Yeah, Master of Business Administration. It's not a course of study. This is one of the very first things I learned, is it's a noun. You become an MBA. You don't study, you can study data analysis, you can study statistics. They teach you very early, you become a manager, you become an MBA. It's a noun. I'm an MBA, you used to be a software developer. And that's where I started to see these principles coming together. This is the language that our management people are talking. They talk about these very interesting words in very interesting ways. And I started to see they were just as data hungry as we are. Like, there is no discipline that I have studied that is more rigorous around data than management science. They really insist on the numbers. They understand our problem from a very different perspective. And that's why I'm here today. It's like, I don't want to talk about Aristotle. I could do that all day long. I'm going to do something really brave, and I'm going to tell you about something I'm studying right now. And that is the language that the language barrier that we have between data management and executive management. These people want us to do our jobs. They pay us. They want us, they buy from us. They want us to be effective. They really do. But there is a language barrier gap that we are missing, and that's what I'm here to do today. Is I've been to the other side of the bridge. I have spoken with the managers. I understand what they're doing, and I'm bringing it back because I want to help us do our jobs. I want us to help us be effective. Let's just get one thing out of the way. Like, who here has played Buzzword Bingo? who's been in a meeting and played Buzzword Bingo? We're going to play Buzzword Bingo. We're going to look at these terms. We're going to see them, but more importantly, we're going to use them effectively, because there's a lot of really interesting science behind this. Like, again, when you go to an organization of 100,000 people and you talk with them and you gather their information, you gather the effectiveness of them, you get a lot of really good data. That's what these people, like, that's what these MBAs have done before us. They've done the hard work. Like, there's a lot of rigorous science there that we can work from, but I am going to say, we're going to talk about buzzwords, because this is how we communicate with each other. So the three that I want to hit on today are value, and really clearly, what is value? What is strategy? Because that is the one that I've seen used least effectively. And then what is a value chain? And this is the kicker. You're going to love this one. So to start with, I want to talk about value. What does value mean to everyone here? Like, when an executive says, what's the value of this? Andrew, what's the value?
Well, it has purpose, I suppose.
Yeah.
Can provide future benefits.
Oh, there we go. Anybody else? I don't do these traditionally, so you're going to get pointed at. Fun? Yeah, it's all of the above. They did a really big, generous study for us. Look it up. The elements of value. Everybody approaches this differently. And every organization, we will see in a second, has to approach this differently. Because it's not just about dollar signs. A lot of the time it is. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of the times we're going to reduce what these stories are, what this value is, to the benefit for the organization. Now, from a private sector perspective, they love to talk about profit. But it's also about pleasing stakeholders. If we are reducing the cost of government, government is going to enjoy that. We're going to be more effective. We're going to do more things. So I would suggest, I'm not going to read out this, but I want you to think, what is the value of this? There is so much diversity in how people understand value, all the way from it, I was told to do it, so I bought it at the cheapest price and it works, all the way up to the very top of the chain is this idea of vision. It makes me feel good. I work at an organization that is changing the hospital network to make people healthier. Oh, doesn't that sound good? Well, we're going to talk about that in a second as well. So our biggest challenge here is to understand what is the value that we extract out of metadata. And to do that, I'm going to pull one of their favorite examples. This is straight from my slides, by the way. Why does somebody go to Bunnings to buy a 1/4-inch drill or a 1/4-inch drill bit? Nothing? Why do they want a 1/4-inch hole? Aha, and that's our challenge. We need to go deeper, right? You go to Bunnings to get a 1/4-inch drill bit because you want a 1/4-inch hole to do something. I want to hang a picture, okay? I want to drill a nail. I want to join things together. What is the thing that you want to do with it? Why do you want a picture hook? Right? I go to Bunnings, I get a 1/4-inch drill bit. I want a picture hook. Why do you want a picture hook? Why? Like, is a 3M little hook, you know, the ones you stick on the wall? It's not going to damage the wall. Maybe that's better. Maybe you can use glue. Like, why is this the most effective thing for us to be doing? Secondly, we need to ask, what do you want this hook to do, right? Do you want it to be permanent or temporary? Because the solutions for that are going to be very, very different. If I say I need a temporary hook versus a permanent hook, my solutions are going to be a little bit different. And lastly, I need to know, what are the extra things that sit around this, right? What are the things that I might be wanting? If I go to Bunnings to buy a drill bit, I want to see screws next to it. If I see the screws, I can pick those up, right? I can buy everything I need in one place. And then lastly, and this is the one that we need to be hitting on, what is the emotional value of a 1/4-inch drill bit? Why am I doing it? I have a picture that I took when I went on a holiday. Me and my dad were there. I was very, very happy. I want to hang it in my office. It's going to make me happy, right? It's going to make me happy to have that picture there so that I can see me and my dad when I took him to the grand final. Makes me so happy, right? A 1/4-inch drill bit fills me with joy. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do this? And what is the emotional benefit I get out of this? Because these are all things that all of our executives are thinking about, all the way up that value proposition chain. Why are they trying to do it? So, all right, I'm not here to sell you a drill bit. I'm not going to show you a picture of my dad. I'm going to tell you about data. So I cribbed this quote. People don't want to buy a metadata registry. They want to know what their data means. So why do they want to know what their data means? Well, the easiest one we can knock out of the way is similar to the quarter-inch hole, legislation. You have to do it. Problem solved. That's the easiest conversation with an executive in the world. There is a new piece of data legislation that says we have to do this. Well, that's it, right? It's a really easy conversation. But it might be reporting. It might be selling all the cost recovery of data. Who here's worked at a data agency or a government agency that has cost recovered data? They've sold it to other government agencies through a memorandum of understanding. Right? You wanted to do it wasn't just for the data. You want them to understand it because you want them to buy it better. You want them to use your data more effectively. It's functional. So this is where we start talking about the why. How am I going to deliver this to you? How do I deliver to you this quarter-inch hole? What are you trying to do with it? Does it need to be here in Australia, elsewhere? Do you want it in a server under a desk? How do you want it? So, and then lastly, what is the ecosystem of things that sit around it? If somebody comes to you and says, I've been told to metadata, I've been told we need a better data strategy, we need to be asking why and what other services exist around it. Is it for a particular visualization? Is it for a particular API? Is it for particular dashboards that the executives require? We ask why? Because eventually we're going to hit on that question. And I want to teach you a little framework that we've used because the last challenge is, what is the emotional value of data? Who gets up and goes, data makes me feel great. Yeah. Data makes me feel fantastic. I'll tell you why. Healthy babies. My metadata system makes babies across Australia healthier. Who here can argue with that? Who here wants healthy babies? I'll see your hands. Oh, wow. Monsters. There were no hands that went up there. Maybe we're tired of user interaction. This was a framework that we used before I started studying to understand why we were doing this. Because again, you've got to get to that last bit. Like, you've got to cross that barrier of understanding how your system, how your program, how your policy helps healthy babies, right? How do we get there? What can we do? And I want to show you how easy it is, right? Your work today, wherever you are, makes healthy babies. And your homework for tomorrow is to figure out, when you're next asked to communicate that, is what is the chain of steps from what you do to healthy babies? Because that's how you're going to get people really interested. Who doesn't believe me? Who doesn't believe this is going to work? Ready? Start with a good one. This is the one that ticked me off. Like, this is the one that ticked this idea off. And this is an idea I'm proud to say I came up with. Is standardized hospital reporting. Every hospital is going to collect the same information in the same ways. It's going to go back to the state health departments. It's going to go to the federal health departments. It is going to give us a better overview of health system analysis. Cool. It's going to give us more efficient public spending, which means we can do more with less, because we understand where systems are performing well and where systems are performing poorly. So we can divert funds to the poorest performers. Heck yeah, healthy babies. Healthy babies from metadata, from standardized hospital reporting. It's not just about a legislative need. You say you need a standardized hospital reporting system because healthy babies. How do you standardize that content? You say everybody's going to collect the data according to this information. We're going to say this is the metadata standard you will use. If it comes back like this, healthy babies. Sounds like a promo, right? Really bad promo. Energy system. So who here's read about, like, we've started to switch over to solar, like a lot of solar, 100% solar in South Australia recently, right? Like, there's a national energy marketplace where the cost of energy, the cost per kilowatt actually dropped to negative. They were paying to offload energy into the network. All right. It meant that there was more efficient energy pricing. So everybody who was operating in the Australian energy market was actually able to see in real time that they were all collecting the same information, which meant a better integration across these systems. Ooh. Okay, because we could see where the efficiencies were, we started to see that the cost of solar was negative. I will pay you to give you power. That's a pretty good deal. That's a good deal just from an economic perspective. If we're getting, sorry. It is if they have a system that requires a certain level of output. So if I have to throw stuff out the door, otherwise it's going to damage my turbines. What it means is that, like, the cost of coal. No, that's okay. Well, it's not a good model for the coal providers. The coal providers were the ones losing out because they had to have turbines on. You can't turn a turbine on and off. You've got to keep it on all the time. You're generating, you know, 15,000, 100,000 kilowatts. You've got to do it. You've got to get it into the network. Otherwise, you're going to get a backload of energy, I guess, and too much something bad happens. Okay, reduced air quality. Boom, healthy babies, cleaner lungs, fantastic. And last one, we'll just power through. Unemployment data. Okay, can we better track the unemployment and skills gap within Australia? We can improve policy because we know what's working better. We can improve what's working and make things better. We can reduce unemployment. If everybody's fully employed, gainfully employed, they can eat better. What do you know? Healthy babies. It's ridiculous. We never once on our website in history to today ever say the word healthy babies. It's a little bit faff, right? It sounds ridiculous. Where we stop is about here. Metadata is improving health outcomes across Australia. It is giving us better air quality, and it is improving population nutrition. These are things that we can say. And again, you know what, just like I said, nobody's going to say we don't want more healthy babies. I don't think people are going to argue with any of the bottom three either. We want really efficient hospitals, we want better air quality, and we want improved population nutrition. So what our challenge is to start going from the top towards the bottom to say, hey, we are having a holistic view of what the value of this is. And surprise, surprise, I just saved you a couple of $100,000 enrolling in your own MBA. This is what they call a balanced scorecard. It is a way of taking that value, taking all of those descriptors of value across the entire organization and putting them on a single place, saying, look, it's not just about the dollars. It's not just about the dollars. It's about making sure our staff are engaged. It's making sure that we are efficient. It's making sure that our customers are happy. And we have customers. No matter where you work, there is always a stakeholder responsible for giving you money for providing them a service, whether it's the government, whether it's a business-to-business organization, whether it's a consumer. We're all in this business. So the next step is, when you're going through this, take all of your healthy baby statements and put them in a balanced scorecard. Tell them it was designed by the Boston Consulting Group, and boom, you're going to get your metadata. It's true. So I'm going to tell you about one last example on this. And this is my favorite, and this is true. So as I was saying, I had a long life before I was a public servant. I used to work internet customer support. I would pick up support calls. I would take support calls. I'd help people troubleshoot their internet. And it is without a doubt one of the most soul-crushing jobs in history. And I can say that because they no longer exist. So that's good. We'd have call queues of 200,000 people, 2,000 people waiting to get answered. You know, on really busy days, if there was an internet outage, you look there and you go, there's 200 people waiting to talk to me, to swear at me because my internet's down. Great. Average call time was about 10 minutes and 10 seconds. And I'm going to run through some numbers here, but I'll do it quickly because it's a Tuesday afternoon. Average call time was about 10 minutes, and they really hammered that into you, right? They said, you've got to get that call time down. You've got to answer more calls. There's 2,000 people waiting to talk to you. the challenge was that this place was also like it was founded by you know, a really smart guy who built all the systems himself. None of them were interconnected. Right? This is a common challenge that we've all seen. So when I was on the phone, I'd have to check out their account. Yeah, you are John Smith. I'd have to check, did they actually have an internet connection to their house? Was it working? Have I gone through all the troubleshooting steps? And you kind of hit all these sites multiple times. But the one we hit the most was their account details page. It was one of the first systems that this guy built. And it no longer scaled. It hit problems. Like, it was a real bottleneck. But nobody knew how to fix it until one guy in the programming department, which wasn't me, and I wish it was, and you'll realize why in a second, was able to kind of like, he did some data fiddling, right? And he kind of looked at it and he said, we can get it down from 3 seconds per request to 1 second per request. Right? And you look at it, you'd look at this 3 or 4 times per call, but if anybody's had to wait for a phone call, you've been on the line to the bank and they're like, hang on, I'll look up your details. You go, how's the footy? Oh yeah, the footy's good. Have you seen it? Because you want to know about the outside world. You know, you're locked in a dark room, it's fluorescent lighting. Yeah, how is the footy going? What's the score? Because you can't look at the internet because they've locked everything down. So every delay added up. So you know what they did when he did this query? Like, so he shaved 2 seconds per request, right? $10,000 bonus. Outside of his normal pay and remuneration, this guy got a $10,000 bonus from the CEO's personal discretionary fund to say thank you. They paraded this guy around the office like he was a hero. Some programmer, some DBA shaved a little bit of time off. Why? Boom. Thank you, Linton. You're an accountant. Ready? So let's have a look at these numbers. Why was this important? Average call time dropped by 10 seconds. All right, that's pretty cool. Less than 10% of a difference, but that can add up. So it meant that I was going through from about 5.91 to 6 calls per hour. All right, that's still, there's not even 1 extra phone call for me. I didn't know the difference. So it meant over the 200 staff who were in the call center, they were actually taking an extra roughly 19 calls per hour. All right. Okay, this is pretty cool. So 19 extra people per hour were getting seen. Like 19 extra problems were being solved. 19 extra people didn't have to wait. Our call queues reduced, but it gets bigger. So we had 19 calls per hour. Can anybody want to take a crack at why that's relevant? It's about 3 extra staff. This dude, in a 2-second query, found 3 whole human beings. 3 extra staff members on the floor without any hiring costs whatsoever. And we were paid about $25 an hour. You got penalty rates on the weekend. Boss. I worked 2 days a week and it funded uni. Saturdays and Sundays. It was the most high pressure job I've ever had. It was really fun. Learned a lot. So this guy saved $75 an hour. Somebody want to take a crack at what that saved the company over the course of a year? You are so wrong. 18 hours a day were our highest call volumes, right?
Sorry, you're working on more than standard day. Yeah.
Correct, because we weren't just saving 3 staff. We were saving 3 staff who were working 18 hours with no breaks. They were working constantly, all around the clock, all the time, to the tune of about $500,000 of staff salaries. The chief operating officer nearly cracked himself when he realized what was going on. All of a sudden, there were huge things happening that nobody understood because this guy just made a more efficient data query, right? Now, we were lucky because we were in a position where at that company, people were like engaged and able to make those changes. Sometimes we're not. Sometimes shaving that 2 seconds is really actually hard. It's a big investment of work. And I think it took him about 3 weeks. Offline, he just kind of did it sneakily and had it happen. But I want to talk about all of the extra things that happen. So the chief operating officer, chief financial officer, super happy. That much more effective. 3 extra staff all around. But why did that make a difference? And this is where our whys come into play. That made a difference because there were more calls being received per hour. It made a difference because there were more people being helped. And who doesn't like helping people? Come on, I'm just trapping you with these questions, right? Everybody loves to help people. Everybody loves to be helpful. So it makes us feel good. It lowered the call queues, which meant we were operationally more efficient, and it meant that we were more operationally efficient. The other really big thing is that because the call queues were lower, because more people were being helped, because the wait times were reduced, people were happier. They measured us quite strictly on customer performance metrics. They'd say, how did the call go? Now, I could do a great job. I could fix your internet, but if you had to wait 25 minutes to get to me, we were getting a 1, right? So, like, we were struggling as well as employees, right? And one thing that they realized was that they chucked in a $10,000 bonus because they wanted us to know that we were valued, right? We loved the fact in the call center that they were investing money in making our lives easier. It's not just about us. So take this example and apply it back to us in the public service or in the Canberra context. You know, you take Services Australia with hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of Medicare staff on the floor. I reckon if you said you could make people come in less angry because of a data query, they're probably going to be your best friend. So the challenge for us is to look at this from an entire perspective and go, all right, what value, right? Value, that value word, what value are we bringing to the organization through data management? And it's not an easy question, and it's not one that I can give you a catch-all for everybody. I can't say, hey, if you take this one answer, take it back, you're going to get what you need. Well, what we can do is we can start taking that bigger picture and go, okay, what is the impact across the entire organization? What is those compounding factors? That compounding interest. What did you say?
Future economic benefit.
Yeah, there you go. So, like, what are the roll-on effects by doing this? What is our efficient data query doing for us? What is it actually doing at the coalface? And this is our balanced scorecard. All of those features hit on this. Can we talk about how it makes our staff happier? The cost to engage staff is actually quite high. You are all in-demand individuals. Keeping you happy and engaged at work is actually a priority. They are measuring it. If they're doing this properly, it will be on their balanced scorecard from the Boston Consulting Group. It's not Sam inventing this. Boston Consulting Group, huge, massive consulting firm, huge in management science. Are we doing that? Are we being more efficient? Is it just a data query, or is it 10,000 data queries a year? Are we saving 1 hour, or are we saving 1 hour per person, per team? What are the bigger, broader impacts of this? And I'll talk a little bit about that when I do the talk about Aristotle units. So was that 2 seconds worth it? Heck yeah. Heck yeah, it was. The last one I want to run you through, and this is quite surprising, is again, straight out of the coursework. Porter's value chain analysis. Sounds like some management speak to me. The old buzzword. So down the bottom, we have activities we do. We bring things in, we change them, we send them out, we talk to people about them, and we make sure that they're continually operating. And then at the top, we have a bunch of things that facilitate this effort. Does this remind anybody of something? That is an ETL process. They're already talking your language. We take some things, we bring them in, they are raw materials. I'm going to transform them and produce some intelligence. It will be new data products, it will be reports, it will be dashboards. I will send that out. I will publish that to the executive, I will put it on the website, I will send it to the minister. And I will then tell people about it. Data.gov.au. We market our data. All of us market our data. And then lastly, we service it. We have people who come to us and go, I can't understand the data. I don't understand what this means. What are these codes? How can I link this? So across the entire primary activities of Porter's value chain, we are actually engaging in this process. And then at the top, so I want to say, all right, we're going to wipe our primary activities. And we're just going to call it ETL. So across our ETL process that we all know and love, bring some data, transform some data, send some data out. I have these enabling things that work with it. I have technology. I have data governance. Data governance will save me. If I have consistent data governance and the people behind it across the organization my value chain becomes more efficient. And I don't want you to think about margin as profits. Margin is the additional value that I've added to this information. The value of raw data is quite low. Raw data is not useful. I cannot give you raw data. I will not give you raw data about my clients, even if you ask for it. I will aggregate it and I will tell you how happy they are very gladly. 4.8 stars on Captiva. They're very happy. So the idea is, what can we pull from that? What extra value are we pulling from that to kind of drive for the organization? I have made our clients health happier. I have made Australian citizens healthier. I've reduced the cost of hospital compliance. I have met the legislative need. It's not just value about money, but it's all of these things combined. So you're all right. So you can all give yourselves a round of applause in a second. So your last piece of homework, which was my homework a couple of weeks ago, was to kind of understand this. This is, again, one of the constant drivers. And one of the things that we know is that appeal to authority works. My ideas are my ideas. Pretty good sometimes, most of the time. But being able to refer back to clear, consistent frameworks from the management sector is very valuable to us. And we already do it. We are already doing it. We manage all of this information ourselves. We just use a different language. So information, we can cross that bridge. We are no longer separate. And we're probably not separate. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a giant pioneer and I've gone off and I've done all this cool stuff. But what I can say is that it's a challenge. Crossing that bridge is hard. I showed this photo to some people at work and they said, that bridge is scary. Would you drive across that bridge? Pretty big, it looks kind of thin. I don't know, probably. I'd trust the guys who built it. The problem is, like, we can cross that bridge. And unfortunately, the lesson that I learned is that you must cross that bridge. It is not effective for us to take our data principles and go, hey, you've got to do the metadata. Can you do the metadata, Andrew? Can you do the metadata? Can you do the metadata? No, what we need to do is we need to go to the loop. Look, this is affecting not just our bottom line. We are not just losing information through this. We are also not meeting the needs of our clients. We have a mission statement on the wall that says we will do good things, and this will make us do good things. We can do it, and you have the frameworks. The slides will be available, and I trust that you will use them effectively. Thank you.
We have some questions.
I'll start with a question. Good presentation, Sam.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. Is there a gap? Because, you know, I like my data. I've gone to data.gov.au. It's all there. Very limited metadata. So I can pull down budget tables, you know, weather charts, how many cows are in New South Wales, all those sort of examples. But as it seems like society, you know, understands why we need a pitchfork, but they can't quite get the reason for metadata, or put it a different way. You have project management software, and senior executives know what happens when projects go south. We need a project management software. How can we bridge the gap to get that champion out there to show that metadata provides value?
I think this probably comes back to what you were saying at the beginning about, like, we aren't, like, overcoming the challenge of we always understand the information. Like, I think we rely heavily on individuals in the sector to stay and be there for a long time. I don't need to write it down. I know a guy who knows it really well, and he can backfill for us. I think that's kind of the risk that we need to get across and say, look, there are systems and there are processes for this. And if we aren't following these processes, we are at risk of losing this information. The motive, I think, for the government sector, at least, is the one that I heard a lot was reputational risk. And that was what concerned people about releasing data out the door, was if they use it wrong, then, you know, people are going to use it incorrectly and draw incorrect inferences. I think the challenge for us is to go, well, we need to help them use it right. You know, we now no longer have the luxury of holding it ourselves. if we have to put it out there, and there is remits to have agencies you have to put it onto data.gov.au. And I think that's where the kind of, I have to have a whole problem comes in, or somebody told me to do it. So if somebody's going to tell you to do it, you might as well do it well.
I think metadata is doing it well. There's been so many cases, you know, in the health sector, both worked in the health sector, where there's been absolute fear of releasing MBS, PBS data, hospital data to researchers because they might do something wrong. It's our data and they're going to do something in relation to vaccinations or something that's going to upset the public. So we can't release it because they might do something wrong, but actually to help them.
And I think
here's the data set and here's the metadata registry.
Yeah.
And you've got to sign that you've read the metadata registry before you start using the data, but go crazy.
Yeah.
Give us that information.
Thanks.
So what word other than metadata would you use? Some metadata, the word is.
We've come on with a whole host. Data dictionary, I think, is a less scary one. And I think we can kind of talk about, you know, do you have a data dictionary? And that's less frightening. And also one of our biggest challenges has been prompting people to find the work they already do. So I guess that goes back to the challenge of, you know, oh, we've never done this and we don't do it. So, well, yeah, you do. You've got a data dictionary somewhere. And a lot of places do. Business glossaries and then performance frameworks, I think, are the other examples of things where you go, oh, we measure this. It's like, cool, let's just document that properly. I think especially across the government sector, there are more data dictionaries and performance frameworks and policy frameworks, which are, again, critical metadata, but we can just not say that word when we started. But there's a lot of those out there.
Are you hearing anything about universities teaching anything about metadata? And the reason I say that is we recently had an organisation come and build us a small bespoke solution, and when they handed over to my team the database, we asked for the data models and the data definitions, and they said, well, you've got table names and column names. It had to be ageist, but none of them had any grey hair. And it made me wonder about this new group of crop of people coming in, that the application is everything.
Yeah, no, I think there is a lack in the sector. And I think, again, this is where that communications gap that we've seen has been, there's two really big aspects to this. And the ones that I've seen be successful are, there's a lot of data science going on. Like, you can go and do a data science course, you can do a bachelor's of data science, and you can learn how to code Python and make some Jupyter notebooks and do all that kind of stuff. And you can make some databases, and there's that bit. The bit that we're missing, I think, is what's really incorrectly called the soft skills side. Like, what did your data mean? Why did you classify it like this? You know, as a really good example today, we were looking at for a client the Australian sex and gender codes published by the Attorney General. This is a well-managed, classified information set managed through the Attorney General and ABS and a whole bunch of organisations. And the understanding of that challenge wasn't a data challenge. It's 3 codes long. You know, that's not hard. Or 4 codes or 5 codes in some cases. The challenge there was going, well, you know, we need a group of people with some statistical background, with some, you know, English background, who can effectively document this. And that's the process that we've been taking with a lot of our clients when we build metadata service desks. Is you need data analysts, but there's another skill set that I think we're kind of missing. And I think it's really cool. And I think it's really exciting. And I think it's again, a messaging problem that we are responsible for overcoming, because if we're the first to recognize it, we're going to be the ones who have to cross that bridge, because we can't tell them the problem. They're not crossing to us. Yeah, I'm going to say them. I'm a data analyst today, right? I can be a data analyst. Yeah, cool. Okay, if they're not going to cross the bridge for us, we have to go to them. And we say, look, you know, these are the skills we need. We need people who have a good conceptual psychology background. We need people who have a good English background. We need people who are analytical thinkers to fill those extra data modeling gaps. And I think that's where the Data Management Association, I'll throw this to you, perhaps has a responsibility to say it's more than just databases. You can do data management without databases. You can do metadata management without metadata registries. It's the process and the governance And that's, I think, the challenge.
It's great. I think, there is a gap in education, of data management broadly across Australia, and not only Australia, but internationally. But internationally, they have, many more learning opportunities, like the Data Warehouse Institute in America and things like that. So it's far more ongoing training than here, where it's a little, and it's the same in Europe. It's IMI UK, I think it is, and various other training organisations that have been around for quite a number of years. So we don't really have data management training apart from Robinson Ryan. Tim is gone. Damn, Tim, you've left. but yeah, there's very little here, and it is a unique problem to Australia, really. It's I can go on about this, but anyway, there's people talk about data skills and things, but the actual willingness to grasp these issues, and you could, talk to people around town who are in data governance or something like that around these issues. It's a hard thing to grasp. Governance, that's easy. Just telling people what to do, standards, processes.
So I think one thing that I didn't touch on in this talk that we covered a lot was around value-based hiring and value-based employee decisions. Something that has changed, and they've noticed this shift, and I think I'm just crack on the edge of millennial, so I can say that I've done this as well, is people are starting to make ethical decisions around why they work somewhere. We're starting to see what they call corporate social responsibility. And people need a purpose for why they do what they do. Like, they've noticed a very distinct trend in that. And whether or not we agree with it or disagree with it, those are the decisions that people are making when they pick jobs. Google says, we're going to change the world. You're going to sell ads. Sorry, Google. You're not changing the world. You're going to sell ads. That's fine. Ads are good. I use ads. You guys buy stuff from ads. We all use ads. We like ads. But that's not why people make employment or job selection decisions nowadays. And I think that's where, again, that topic of value is something that we can hit on and go, look, your data, and I've said this to my employees, and they really click on it. I'm like, you're not here to make code, you're not here to make data, you're here to make healthy babies. And I do say that. You new employee, are a requirement for a solid health system in Australia because of Aristotle. We are, making sure that these hospitals are operating efficiently. Because of that, there's efficient hospital spending, and your code is making healthy babies. And that's, again, the decision we have to take back when we talk with people. It's not just about data modeling. That's a really important part of it. But I think part of the messaging now has to be, it's for a purpose. We don't just data manage for no reason. We're doing it for a broader purpose. And that's what's going to get more people to these events.
What I've also seen, though, is that sometimes the programmers, we create this wonderful metadata, and the programmers don't read it. And sometimes they complain about some results and said, did you look at the metadata? And you said, no. And I've had, should have let it go through once, because it probably would have served the cause of metadata. But I had one department looking at produced a report that they showed the national income had improved as a result of some government policy. It looked fabulous. But it didn't smell right, because you get a feeling for data. And I said, did you realise that 2 years ago we redefined the definition of total income to include fringe benefit income? And they hadn't read the metadata, so they just seen the total income going up.
And that's where I think potentially letting it go through may have been the right call, or at least calling it to account, to say, look, we are at risk. We are at risk for this. If there's anything that gets an executive's ear, risk. I hear risk a lot, and it's like risk, reputational risk, potential economic risk, and that's where we go with these propositions and say, this is the impact of these decisions. Sorry, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. If I could pull that thread a little bit more and focus maybe on how do you see metadata management supporting human judgment and decision making, correlating and producing valued insights? So we've sort of focused a lot on the inputs to the process and the sort of bits in between, but and we're actually making those decisions as humans. Do you have many thoughts around sort of the wraparound elements that would go into communicating that decision-making process in terms of metadata?
I think, again, this kind of comes back to your question at the back, which is good. Is tying all three together is what we're seeing, I think, is that there is a growth in AI, and it's really valuable and really powerful. But again, the one thing that I kind of look at is the emerging trend of ethics in AI. Are the models that we're producing from this data making the right decisions? So an example that I saw recently was based off of resumes, it was selecting the best candidate based on the available data. It looked at the available data and said, well, historically, the most appropriate person for an executive role was a man. So based on the data that I've seen today, I will select for you a candidate list of men. That doesn't fly nowadays for very good reason. Like, you know, the environment has changed. But that's where an example of, you know, ethics in AI depends on this information. Like, we need to be able to say, well, I understand what these columns mean. I understand that an individual who may have had a change in income hasn't all of a sudden become rich. I'm not going to target them with new information. It's important for us so that those models are making the correct inferences. And that's where I think machine learning is quite valuable if it's got the data and it's got the human intelligence behind it as well. And that's, again, where we talk about on our website, is we say, look, you know, you need to be able to describe this data so that the models are correct, or so that you can interpret it.
Have you seen anything, any work done to look at automating the, not the validity, but the adequacy of metadata? When I was at one agency, we tried to write something that we ran against column definitions to work out, you know, should they be at least, you know, 60 characters or something like that. We're trying to find out some ways of trying to automate some sort of quality metrics against metadata.
I have seen that because I've built that. We can talk a little bit about that when I do the me slide or the Aristotle slide. But yeah, I think there is, again, more focus on that. I think there is a very real possibility for automated data governance. The analytical thought that goes into writing a good definition will never go away. The analytical thought that goes into creating a good data model is always work that's going to be there because it's analytical, creative work. We are creative thinkers. What I think is possible is that we can allow people to do that in their own terms. Like, there's a lot of people who are getting interested in this, and our focus has always been everybody in your agency is using data. Everybody is using data. Everybody should be involved in metadata, and our role should shift towards helping build systems that can automate the governance of that. And yes, I think it's definitely very possible. It is possible. So.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, so we'll now move on to the sponsor talk. To you. Please made Sam from Aristotle.
Thank you.
So we have two sponsors tonight, Catapult BI and Aristotle.
Well, you guys can finish, I suppose, because I'm still standing here. So I tried not to talk about us. I was really beating myself up about this in the first bit because I was like, I'm not going to talk about us. I want to talk about a general challenge that we're all seeing. How much time do I have? 15 minutes? 10 minutes? Okay, I won't be long. And I'll make sure that these slides go out. Again, what I really want to cover here, and I'll be really quick because I think we've got you talking and then years afterwards, is the additional areas of metadata that I'm seeing. So we've focused all of Aristotle around your traditional data management, but things that haven't always been surfaced in the market, I don't think. There's a lot of fantastic tools out there. We just do something slightly differently, and we're really trying to communicate that because there's a lot that we can do. So we do a lot of interoperability. The one that you're talking about is that governance and publishing. Like, can we build systems that will automatically check these things built on known rules? I think the answer is yes. I think we can do like that a lot of the time. And that's what we're focused on, is we want to get more and more people using user-friendly content to build these definitions because they're the ones who created the data. There are policy areas creating performance indicators for hospitals. They can use this. We want them to use this. We've seen quite a lot of, it's a non-controversial way to say viral these days, spreading growth. We've seen a lot of, organic growth across organizations who are using this because they're starting to introduce it through their teams. Like, I'm using it, hey, you're a policy creator, can you come and verify this information before we start publishing it, and starting to capture that data governance. The other big things that we look at is that standard-based performance, standard-based design. So we've really focused heavily on 3 major platforms. We've focused on the ISO 11179 metadata model. Everybody here is going to get that. So it's basically around that data dictionary content. So can you build an effective data dictionary? Can you build an effective glossary? But the one area that we've kind of stepped off into is not dashboard creation, but performance indicator management. Like, why are we doing the things that we're doing and what is the goal? So there's a lot of data that we know about that we haven't collected yet. I am going to go and collect data about all of you after this and see how you felt about my talk. The data doesn't exist yet, but I can build a performance metric and say, well, if everybody was awake by the end of Sam's talk, then you did a good job. We can manage those performance indicators up front. The idea that we're trying to take is a big one that we've stolen out of the design thinking community of going, we know that there's a lot of data governance going on. It exists, it is email driven, it is file driven, it is share drive driven. And we want to drive that through to systems that allow for that team collaboration. It's not just 1 or 2 or 3 people in an organization. It's 500 or 600 people in organizations who are effectively creating this content because they need to be aware of it, because they need to be participating in this ecosphere. We are all about the democratization of data at Aristotle. You should be too, because it's going to make all of our jobs easier. The reason for this is hitting on that value. Increased productivity. So one of the areas that we were working with saw a reduction in data queries, not because it was going away, but because people were self-servicing more. There's a lot of hunger for this. And generally, again, the trends today are, I can do it myself. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to book my own flights. I know what I want. I want to see what the data is. So the advantage of this, because we stay separate to the data itself, is people can see and understand the data before they even receive it. So again, that's increasing the ability for them to self-service and reducing the cost for our data stewards. I think it's also increasing that performance, that organizational performance and compliance with a lot of policies. Yeah, this is what we do. We're mostly commercial off the shelf at the moment. Our biggest product is the Aristotle Metadata Registry, although we are starting to diversify what we offer. At the moment, we primarily deliver that through the cloud, and that's not as scary as you think for a lot of organizations once you start talking through that data, metadata separation. And we do a lot of professional services. I'm going to give a shout out to John. We actually do partnerships with Catapult BI as well, because there's a whole host of work in this sphere. Like, there's a whole host of work beyond just software delivery. It's around being able to help people do it themselves. So a big part of our role has been not just, here's a metadata registry, it's here's your data strategy, here's how we're going to build your team, here's how we're going to skill those team, and here's how we're going to transition that team to business as usual so that you know what they're doing at a really high level. One thing that we're doing on our roadmap this year that we're due to be publishing in the next week is what we call the executive dashboard. What we want to do is we want to give every SES in Canberra the ability to see what's going on, how much content's being created, how often are my definitions being used, what is the likelihood of this being linked, and what are the personal identification risks of that. We're going to put that in front of every set of eyeballs, in front of every boardroom in Canberra. This is who we work with. We're growing. We're doing a lot, actually. It's pretty fun. I'll walk through 2 really good case studies to talk about why this is valuable for us. We've been working with a large government agency here in Canberra with over 1,500, nearly 1,500 staff on the platform. I shouldn't say over. I should say nearly 1,500 staff on the platform actively using it. And actively using it means I'm searching, I've got an account, I'm raising issues, I can participate in conversations, I'm working with my team effectively to keep this up to date. And it's been really effective. So we've basically done an entire lift and shift to get their content in, and that's supported the rest of their ecosystem. Family and community services, again, quite a large number of staff who are using it there. Again, focused on performance management. Their biggest #1 criteria for success is safe children. I wasn't lying when I said healthy babies. Their key performance indicators are around the health and safety of children in New South Wales. And I'm very, very proud every time I put this slide up to say my metadata registry is helping the children of New South Wales. So cool. It's not just like, I'm a millennial. It's not just about data. And boy, howdy, money is fun, but helping people is actually what gets me up in the morning. And we can say that we've done that. We help them manage the performance indicators for their entire network to know that policy works. We've been doing that for several years and we've been seeing improvements in that area. That's my bit. So data is great. We can help you with your data. We would like to help you with your data so we can all do great things together.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sam. That's great.
Thank you very much.
Has anybody got any more questions?
Hey, any questions about the product?
Before we
Well,
go-
I can critique the whole damn thing if you want.
Any more
We might buy
questions?
I think, Sam, this conversation is best done over a beer or glass of
Well,
wine.
I can see the beer and the wine's out there.
I concur. You're all free. Thank you for
Okay.
listening.
Thanks, Sam.
More than happy to take questions. We've got cards afterwards as well. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
So to help yourself being over there today.
Please. Everyone done great.
Thanks everybody online. I hope you enjoyed the session. Yeah, good. I'm now going to end the session.